Today's first reading, Moses reminds the Israelite people of the goodness of God, having a God so close to them that he would lead them with his truths, how God cared for them in their wanderings in the desert, and now he's encouraging them to follow God's commandments into the future as they're now about to enter finally into the promised land. And so too for us, it can be good to be reminded of where we have been, especially in the last few years, and to be encouraged as we move forward in following God's will for us. So that's kind of what I want to do in this homily today. We go through so many changes as years go by in our lives. We all grow older, new families are started, new children, grandchildren are born. We start new jobs. Maybe some of us then enter into retirement. Loved ones who once were with us have now died and gone home to the Lord. And often we face things that we can't fully control, even as we try to make plans for the future. And we've undergone unique Catholic changes as well. Of course, not changes to what we believe. The eternal truths of the faith, those never change. But the way in which we experience the living out of the faith does indeed change in various generations. And most obvious in the last few years has been the creation of our Holy Spirit Catholic Parishes family as a result of the Journey of Faith pastoral planning. The reality of the changing demographics, declining priest numbers, and diminishing participation in the sacramental life of the church has required these kind of major shifts of how parishes are organized, especially out here in our rural areas. So all parishes are now part of larger families of parishes served by fewer priests. More than 20 rural churches no longer have a weekend mass, including 2 that are in our own family. And some groups of parishes have canonically recombined to form new parishes in some of the other parish families. Some of our rural Catholic high schools, including here with Cedar Catholic, have undergone restructuring of leadership recently, away from the president pastor to the lay president and board of jurisdiction model. We've been in the midst of this implementation of all these things for a while now, but we're still learning how to live as a parish family. A lot of the focus has been on all the external structural and leadership changes to make the family of parishes work. But there's something that's even more important than those external things, and that is the internal or the cultural type changes that we go through. And Jesus points this out in the gospel today. He says that externals of the faith are not enough. It wasn't enough for the Jewish people to have all their ritual purifications, cleansing the outsides of their bodies. He says, no, what was really needed was the internal cleansing, the conversion of hearts to avoid evils that come from within. And so the same thing is the case for our Holy Spirit Catholic parishes, that it's not just simply enough to work on the various external structures through this change, but we also need to work on the internal, the more cultural and spiritual aspects of the parishes. In fact, if all we do are the external restructuring into larger families, that will not automatically mean that Catholic faith will flourish for us. But rather, flourishing of our Catholic faith requires, in every generation, a renewal of our inner life of faith within. And that's why even before we began all the changes with the Journey of Faith, that we were given a vision that ultimately comes from God, from Jesus himself, that was formed for our whole entire archdiocese to help guide us in our continued inner renewal. And that vision for us has been one church, encountering Jesus, equipping disciples, living mercy. Hopefully that sounds familiar. And this vision statement was then further summarized by Archbishop Lucas in a single big goal, that every parish would become a missional parish by 2026. And so let's think about how have we been implementing these more kind of internal and cultural changes based upon this vision. So one church. Well, externally, we're one church, 7 parishes in one family. A Catholic mindset, to be fully Catholic, means to recall that we're part of something much bigger than ourselves. At the church, the Catholic Church, Catholic means universal. And that's why we've striven in our family of parishes to do more things together. To have a family pastoral council to help lead us in the vision for all of our parishes as a whole. We're using common means of communications, common bulletins, common website, using Flocknote and the common main office. We have had our Lenten missions where we've had them in various locations, inviting everybody from across the family to come and participate. Our religious education programs. We have our God Nights where we draw in families from the various communities to join together. We're implementing this year a common curriculum as part of the religious ed and a greater consistency among the confirmation program. This past summer, we had our first combined Holy Spirit camp with students from all across our various parishes. The next part of the vision is encountering Jesus. Our parishes need to be places where everyone has an opportunity to meet Jesus in an ever-deepening way. And there's 2 main ways in which we meet Jesus. It's through prayer and through the sacraments. With regard to the sacraments in particular, these past 3 years, the U.S. bishops have kind of given us part of our vision, leading us in the Eucharistic revival that's been going on, to renew our knowledge and love of Jesus present here, really and truly in the Blessed Sacrament. So we've done various things, like given homily series on the Mass, and we've had Eucharistic-themed Lenten missions, and now we have Eucharistic adoration scheduled in every single one of our churches. Father Cordy took a group of you with him on the National Eucharistic Congress. And most recently, over the last several weekends, we've had the Sunday Gospels from John chapter 6, the Bread of Life Discourse, helping us reflect of how the bread that Jesus gives us here at Mass is his flesh for the life of the world. Next is equipping disciples. That's all about how our parishes must be places where all of us, of all ages, are continually learning and growing, not only in the content, the intellectual content of our faith, but also growing and learning how to meet Jesus ourselves so that we can then go forth and share Jesus with others through both our words and our actions. And so we do this in various ways. We support our parents in teaching their children on how to become disciples, through sacramental program, through our religious ed programs, through our Catholic schools. But it's not just for children who have to grow as becoming disciples. As adults, we must continue to be equipped. A big part of this has been the School of Mission program that first started here at Holy Trinity, but then we've expanded out to the whole family. The emphasis of that School of Mission has been on the practical skills of how to invite and lead people in small groups, and emphasizing the method of praying with the scriptures that we will call RAP or Lectio, especially like Live Lent together, small groups, or meeting in small groups throughout the year. So equipping disciples. And finally, the third one is living mercy, which is all about recognizing the specific ways that Jesus is calling each of us to share our gifts in service of others. As the second reading says today, be doers of the word and not hearers only. And this is shown forth in so many ways through the various ministries and groups that we have across our parishes. Whether you're on one of the kind of parish leadership type councils, or, one of the women's or men's groups, or liturgical ministries, or prayer groups, or a ministry that's specifically designed in service in some way to others. In each of those cases, we are called to listen to God's voice to understand how he's calling us to be disciples, How is the ministry or group I'm in, or how maybe individually, even if I'm not part of a specific ministry, how do I fit into that vision? How are we bringing about the unity of one church? How are we helping other people encounter Jesus? How are we equipping those within the group we belong to be disciples? How are we showing God's mercy, especially to those most in need? There's so many ways that God can call us to show his mercy on others, and as we encounter Jesus more in the prayer and sacraments, and as we become better equipped to become as his disciples, then it's through that we become more clear of how he's calling each one of us to go and live out his mercy towards others. So just like Moses wanted to remind the Israelite people of where they'd been and now where they're going, so too, I wanted to remind you of this big picture of where we've been through all these changes so that we can think about where we're going. And just as Jesus emphasized the transformation of our interior life, not just the externals, I also wanted to remind us of this vision that has to guide our transformation of our interior spiritual life within our parishes. So if that's where we've been, where are we headed from here? Well, as we have, over the course of the last number of months, met with different parish leaders, it became clear that many people are ready to go deeper and to build upon the good things that have already been happening within our parishes. So, in a few weeks' time, we're beginning a new kind of initiative that we've called Ignite. And you may have seen allusions to this that Father Cordy has already made in the bulletin, if you've read some of that. But if you haven't, Ignite is kind of our plan for continuing growth in prayer and evangelization within our parish family. And it really kind of grows out of that earlier school of mission, fulfilling the need to grow deeper in prayer, which is really how we're sustained in growing a culture of evangelization, of sharing the good news of the gospel in our communities. The name Ignite that we're using comes from the image of fire that's used throughout the scriptures for God's intense love for us. And in particular, of how the Holy Spirit, when he descended upon the disciples in tongues of fire on Pentecost. Since the Holy Spirit is our patron now for our Holy Spirit Catholic parishes. It's only the Holy Spirit that can ignite God's love within us so that we can then go forth to share God's life with others. So this Ignite program will have 3 parts to it. We have Ignite workshops, which will happen 2 times a year. We have something we call Upper Rooms, which will happen 2 times a year. And then something called Sunday Sparks, which will, they're little short tidbits that will happen throughout the year on Sundays. The first Ignite workshop is going to be coming up September 21st, and the first Sunday Spark here at Holy Trinity will be September 29th. And I'm not going to go into all the details right now as to what each of them are about. That'll be my next homily. I'll have one more homily with you before we reach those dates. So I'll go into more detail then about Ignite and Sparks and Upper Room. This Ignite is really about bringing together the things that we've already done, both the external structural changes and that interior vision, so that together as Holy Spirit Catholic parishes, we can indeed become a family of missional parishes into the future.